Hello, and welcome to Professional Development Module on Teacher and Student Interaction. Here we're working on creating an environment of respect and rapport, and for my 2 cents, this is maybe the most important module you'll hear done by me. Since we're talking about student and teacher interaction, it's obvious that our main goal is establishing a culture for learning in each of our classrooms specifically, and on the wider focus, establishing a culture for learning across our district, across our state, and eventually across our country. The themes that we're going to tackle in today's module include communicating expectations for learning, communicating expectations for behavior, responding to student misbehavior in class. I would like to note that there's a lot more information provided on that in other modules, and responding respectfully to incorrect answers. We're going to provide some strategies and tips for how to deal with that and really turn an incorrect answer in the classroom into an opportunity for everyone in the room to keep on learning. As the adult and professional in the classroom, it's ultimately up to the teacher to intentionally create a positive environment for everyone in the room. This is especially important when we talk about creating effective student-teacher interactions. Those positive interactions provide emotional support for the students, hopefully from us and between each other, and maybe even for us if we've really done a good job of creating a positive environment. In the realm of classroom organization, we all know that when students are engaged in effective learning activities, there's less time where misbehavior or off-task activity will happen. Also, instructional support. Interactions that teach students to think and provide ongoing feedback and support to each other really bolster their ability to perform in the classroom and place teachers in that exceptional range. This diagram illustrates what I was talking about in the previous slide. Effective teacher-child interactions really impact student learning as well as teacher performance. As we can see going clockwise, evaluation scores improve, our fidelity to the curriculum improves, ongoing professional development is bolstered, teacher preparation is more effective, and for the students, social and academic outcomes are increased as well as improved teacher outcomes. So we really need to spend time with it. Let's unpack that wonderful diagram with some specific examples. High levels of emotional support are associated with increased reading and math achievement. Who doesn't want that? Children are more engaged and exhibit greater self-control in classrooms that offer more effective teacher-student interactions. And a pretty stunning one, first-grade children at risk for failure perform on par with their peers, both socially and academically, when they're exposed to classrooms with effective teacher-student interactions. So this means that we can really increase what we get out of every single classroom in our building, regardless of what those students' projections are on standardized tests, if we can provide them the appropriate, responsible, effective teacher-student interactions that all of our students deserve. Now, that's not the whole story. All right, let's consider what these positive student-teacher relationships will look like in a classroom. Any classroom, any subject, any school. Teachers show their genuine pleasure and enjoyment of students. Hey, that's why we're here, right? We love kids. We want to help kids. Let the kids know. It makes them happy to be in your classroom. It makes them happy to come to school. Both of those things increase performance. Teachers interact in a positive and respectful manner with students. In bright, bold capital letters, it should say, with all students all the time. Whether a student's disruptive or you just had the worst class ever, every time that bell rings and a new group of students comes through the door, we have the opportunity to react to them and interact with them in the most positive, respectful manner possible. If it was your child going into that teacher's room, you would want nothing less, and we should be providing nothing less to every single student that we serve. Teachers offer students help, answering questions in a timely manner, that's professionalism, offering support that matches the children's needs. We can only do that if we get to know the kids and really try and help them achieve their academic and social objectives. To do so, we have to deal with them as we would anybody else as a person. Get to know them, try and help them get where they're going. Let's look at some more positive student-teacher relationship descriptors. First, teachers help students reflect on their thinking and learning skills. This is known as metacognition, or thinking about thinking. Students are going to be able to get more out of their classes, more out of their text, more out of in-class assignments and projects if they're able to slow down, think about how they're attacking a problem, and apply some set strategies. More on that in further modules, to be sure. That we as teachers know and demonstrate knowledge about individual students' backgrounds, interests, emotional strengths, and academic levels. If you know a student responds negatively when they're confronted, don't confront them. Use humor. Take them aside one-on-one. If you know that you have half of the cheerleading squad in your math class, I would be finding some math examples that lean heavily on cheerleading-related items. And that we as teachers seldom show irritability or aggravation towards students. Let's be the adults in the room. Let's manage our emotions and really use every interaction we have as a chance to be positive. If you're going to give in to anger, I would consider possibly another profession or counseling to help you develop your own anger management skills. Not to oversimplify the matter, but let's look at some do's and don'ts of interaction with our students. We'll start with the don'ts so we can end on a positive note. Don't assume that being kind and respectful will bolster performance on their own. It won't. We still have to employ proven educational strategies, but those educational strategies won't work if we're not kind and respectful, or at least they'll be limited. Don't give up on developing positive relationships with your students, ever. There's never a point where it's too late to really start to turn around and make gains with even the most difficult students. Trust me. Don't assume that kindness is reserved for elementary students. Everybody, age 0 to 999, respects and appreciates kindness. And please don't think that relationships are inconsequential. Classroom relationship is the foundation for every single thing that we do. Do make an effort to know all of your students, know their names, know about their families, know the neighborhood they live in. Do call them by their first name, not Mr. So-and-so. Do make an effort to spend individual time with your students, especially those students who are shy or difficult. That will pay off in the long run. And do be aware of implicit and explicit messages that you're sending. Getting to know our students is paramount. If we don't know who they are, we're going to have real difficulty providing them meaningful and relevant instruction. Not only in instruction, but in managing their behaviors, knowledge of that student can really go a long way. I had a wrestler who was constantly getting kicked out of one of his classes, and I went on to ask him why. He explained to me that he and the teacher did not get along, and that anytime there was the least bit of disagreement, he snapped and went overboard. I asked what would happen if he did the same thing in a wrestling match, and he said he would probably lose because he would give his opponent an in. Things didn't magically get better for those two, but that student came into that class understanding that his behavior mattered, and I had the same conversation with the teacher. At the risk of painting with too broad a brush, keep it positive. Always keep it positive. A good quote that I've seen recently and like to put in my classroom is, "Be kind whenever possible. It's always possible." Nobody wants to come into a classroom every day where they're being bombarded with orders or commanded to stop a behavior in front of their friends. Nobody likes to be pestered. Our students are like this. They're like us, just younger. None of us enjoy those behaviors, so why would we assume that a student with less emotional regulation than we have is going to come in and act appropriately when faced with that? If you have a problem with a student, find a one-on-one place and time where you can get together and discuss the situation positively and seek a solution so that both of your time can be used as best as possible. Part of our jobs as teachers is providing students with feedback, and it should be feedback that's meaningful and positive. And meaningful feedback tells students that you care about them and their learning. If they never ever hear from you, they assume that what they do does not matter and that you do not care. So do open up the lines of communication about their performance academically and behaviorally. Do balance discussions of weakness with recognition of accomplishments. And I would really recommend starting with and focusing on what are their strengths and building on those to the point that the weaknesses are diminished. Convey interest in your body posture, facial expressions, and tone of voice. Lean in. Make it obvious that you're paying attention. If you're asking a question, make it sound like you're asking a question. And if you're listening, reflect back some of the things that the student has said to you. All right, let's look at some more tips for creating a positive classroom environment. And remember, the goal here is not to just make the room warm and fuzzy, but really to support our educational goals. We need to make sure that we allow time for our students to link our concepts that they're learning in class to their own experiences. And this could be experiences in other classrooms or out in the community or extracurricular activities. We need to build fun into our classroom activities to engage the students. Activities that create a sense of community are really desirable because it allows the students to see that what they're learning impacts other people and also impacts other learning that they are doing. And we should try and have a chance for the students to enjoy and bond with their instructor as well as their other students. This allows them to be supportive and be caring and really to support each other in the academic process. Furthermore, we have opportunities to manage more than just our own interactions with students. We can manage our interactions with other teachers to appropriately model professionalism to the students, and we should really keep an eye on managing student-to-student interaction to make sure that it's both positive, safe, and academically supportive. We should create a positive, effective classroom where students feel welcomed and respected, and you really must shape the norms of peer-to-peer interaction in a positive way. We want to stop bullying and praise students when they cooperate with each other and really make that a goal. Student-to-student questioning, student-to-student cooperation, because we all know out in the real world, nobody works in isolation. Everyone works with somebody else. One way that we can set these norms comes directly from group counseling theory, and that's making a conscious use of hopeful language. For example, I hope we can all listen to each other in group today, or I hope we can all do our very best on this project. And over time, this proves to be more successful in setting effective group norms than stating overtly, you listen to each other, you do well. The students want to buy in. If you're hopeful, they want to be hopeful too, and they really want to rise to that positive opportunity. So remember, hopeful language. Our next big idea in this module is communicating expectations for learning in our classrooms. These expectations should be explicitly explained to all of the students at the outset of the year, and they should carry on consistently right through the year. Now, if some of our expectations need to change based on the students in the classroom or some other characteristic has changed or been found to not work, of course, we should adjust or amend those expectations, but we need to make sure that the expectations are shared and overly communicated to all of the students in the room. I would also include support staff or people that you are team teaching with, just so everybody knows and is on the same page as far as what are the academic expectations. Let's take a look. We need to explain and model appropriate attitude, behaviors, and preparedness for class. And we need to do this and be an absolute model in this. We cannot expect our students to show up with a better attitude, behaviors, or preparedness than we ourselves as professionals are showing up with. We need to set procedures for asking questions, providing answers, and more. Going to the restroom, spot checks for comprehension, set procedures for submitting work and handing out makeup work. The more procedures and the better we understand them, the smoother the classroom will run. Finally, we need to communicate what are our goals at the very beginning and make sure that all of our academic activities are aimed at these goals. The skills that we're trying to teach, the knowledge that we're trying to impart, the products that we're trying to create in each and every academic activity. And last, let's make our goals specific, step-by-step, and attainable. Sometimes teacher-student interactions or relationships are harmed because students do not understand what our expectations for their behavior might be. And then we go ahead and correct and prompt and order and cajole, and the student still doesn't understand what the expectation is. So again, we need to clearly and explicitly explain what are the behaviors that we should be exhibiting in each class. To make sure that they understand, I suggest we post 5 to 7 rules where everyone can see them, post and phrase them positively. Please remain quiet. Please remain in your seat. Not prohibitive rules. Model what it looks like to follow these rules. Show them. Act it out. Do it several times. They'll find it amusing. Rehearse expected procedures until everybody understands them. And then when you find out that some people don't understand them, for example, when an appropriate time it is to sharpen your pencil, reteach it. Some students are going to forget. New students are going to be coming into the room. That's an excellent time for you to reteach procedures and tighten up the procedures and make sure that the classroom is operating as effectively as it can. We need to model professional adult behavior at all times. Sometimes the students do not see this at home, depending on their home situation. So this is where they're going to be able to see a professional acting appropriately in action. And really, let's be that light and that model for all of our students. And finally, let's be consistent and fair with all consequences for disruptive behavior. If a student does something in your room on Tuesday, the same consequence should apply on Thursday. And it should be the same for Bobby as it is for Timmy. That way they feel safe and know what the rules are. I'm really excited by this next theme, and I'm happy that it's in this module. Responding respectfully to incorrect answers. We know not every student response is going to be accurate or complete. However, we can really run with those opportunities and make it a teachable moment rather than an embarrassment for a student who maybe doesn't get the right answer. I would suggest that we stay with the student. If they've given an incorrect response, don't just move on. Don't let "I don't know" carry the day. Let's try and do some of the following things. Don't put pressure on the student. Try and reduce the pressure. Point out the positive aspects of their response. "Well, Bobby, that's not exactly complete, but you did make some good points. Let's look at those first," would be one way. Let's talk more about that and maybe open up the question for a classroom discussion or maybe some choral responses that everyone can chime in on. Allow wait time. Don't just say, "Well, I guess you don't know." Give them at least 7 seconds to formulate an answer and get it out to the class. Don't rush them. Not all of us can think very quickly on the spot. Or turn the question to a partner or group discussion. "Okay, well, Timmy, you have part of the answer. Why don't we all get with partners and talk about what we think the answer would be completely, and we'll come back and talk about it." That way everybody can try and have a stab at that question. And a trick that we've been employing around the 8th grade civics classrooms is, well, what would you say if you did know? We've been finding some excellent responses where students kind of loosen up and figure, hey, I can just come out with what I think the answer is, and surprisingly, a lot of the times it's right, or at least very insightful. I hope that we can do this better. A final tip and a really fun graphic on responding respectfully to incorrect answers would be, when you provide the correct response to the class, let's do so in a positive, non-judgmental fashion. Remember, we're looking for what is the gold in that answer. What did they get right? And it might only be that they were willing to take a chance. And if that's the case, let's praise the student for that specific behavior. Hey, Sally, I'm really glad that you took time to try and chime in on that. I'm glad that you shared your opinion with the class. Rather than just give them the correct answer and move on, why don't we ask some questions to try and elicit the correct answer from the students? Maybe not that specific student, it might be from another student, but let's let the answers try to come from the class. That way they feel ownership of the knowledge and really have confidence to go out and try to teach their peers. Aside from not wanting to embarrass or belittle a student for having an incorrect answer, there are a lot of benefits of correctly handling incorrect responses, as we can see in this next slide. When you are perceived as a trustworthy and respectful teacher, students are more willing to put forth effort in your classroom. One of the ways that you can foster that perception is being respectful if they make a mistake. When we are dealing with wrong answers appropriately, they can become opportunities for growth and instruction. Maybe they only need to have some minor intricacies pointed out, and their knowledge will be improved. When you're respectful, more students are willing to volunteer and take more risks in your classroom, and it takes the fright or the terror away from participating. So remember, use hopeful language, be inviting, and make any answer an opportunity for education. Okay, our final topic in today's module is responding to student misbehaviors. Now, this is a topic that is covered in ample detail in 3 other modules. More about that in a second. But the big points in this that we should remember as far as fostering appropriate, effective, and positive teacher-student relations are these. Remember, every student behavior is conveying a message. Even if the behavior is negative and disruptive, that student is trying to tell somebody something, probably you. So before you react with anger, before you yell or scream, maybe even before you use your Tier 1 classroom management skills, step back and think, what's this student attempting to tell us with their behavior? Don't take their misbehavior personally. Don't invest energy in anger. Those are not things that are going to bring positive outcomes to you or to the student. Instead, really think about, how can I solve this problem and move the class forward in an effective, intentional way that is going to help everybody reach our academic goals for the day, and maybe even some of the students will learn a positive behavior lesson. If you have more questions as to how to deal with students exhibiting negative behaviors in the class, and remember, it's not a negative student, it's a student choosing to exhibit a negative behavior, please refer to these 3 modules on classroom management. First, Foundations of Classroom Management, as well as Tier 1 and Tier 2 classroom management interventions. I hope that this module has been educational and useful for you. Please feel free to review as you wish.